So let's get to the first question, which is, what is a good way to stimulate my appetite? So to whoever has asked this, I kind of hate you because I'm always ready to eat. So I actually want to talk about both sides of this, right? So it is a reality, though, that, sometimes, let's say, for instance, we're talking like morning, and we've gotten up and we're told that we should eat breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but you're thinking, I'm not hungry. Or, maybe we can actually go the entire afternoon without having lunch because we're busy, we're fixing the house, we're doing work, and our mind isn't there, and then we actually forget to eat. Who's experienced that? Just show a hand, or you can nod. Yeah, right. We've all been there. So what happens, when that happens? So what I will say to the people that wake up in the morning and they're looking to stimulate their appetite, and they're wondering why that they're not hungry, I wouldn't jump so quickly to say, well, I'm not hungry, but I know I need to eat breakfast, so I'm just going to force myself to eat something. Listen to the cues of your body. We are all very different. And now this is a little bit individualized, and without getting really too far into it, depending on what's going on in your body, there might actually be a reason why you're not hungry. So what I will say first and foremost is that if you are truly not hungry, now that is, no grumbling in the stomach, we're not feeling lightheaded, fatigued in the morning, respect that. And maybe start your morning off with a little bit of movement, definitely some sunlight, and see where that takes you. So why I'm saying those two things, and I'm not actually talking about a food, is the reason that you might not be hungry in the morning might have to do with your quality of sleep. And really, at the end of the day, focusing on sleep quality is going to help you increasing your energy, balancing your hormones, and losing body fat. But I think maybe we can save all of that information. We can do a full deep dive on sleep. In order to reset your internal alarm clock, your circadian rhythm in the morning, the easiest thing you can do that costs you $0 is get outside and get some sunlight. Now, I know that we live in North America, and that might actually be more difficult than just said, right? Okay, well, I've got to get up in the morning, pack kids' lunches, get myself to work. I can't just go and lounge and drink my coffee outside. That's okay. You can buy full spectrum light bulbs and replace some of your bathroom lighting with full spectrum light, or find yourself a full spectrum light that's just a plug-in that you can use to simulate that sunlight. And this is actually a huge factor now that we're entering winter when it comes to keeping your energy level set. So that's number one. Number two, if you can, try and get some movement in the morning. This might not be a workout. This might just be a quick walk, but that might be enough to start to stimulate your appetite. Overall, if you are truly not hungry, let's not force that. But this is a great segue to the next question. If we start to optimize our circadian rhythm and you do wake up hungry in the morning, what is a good meal for breakfast? And this is probably the most common question that I get when I'm dealing with clients one-on-one. And it is exactly why I start with breakfast when I am developing a meal plan or a program for my client. The first meal of the day is your first opportunity to set the pace for the day, right? And there's a little bit of a myth out there where we are told to eat our carbohydrates in the morning. And we're told this because, okay, well, if you eat your carbs in the morning, then you can burn them off throughout the day. Who's heard that? Yeah, I see a few people saying yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so have I, right? Over 10 years ago, before I got into this field, that's what I knew to be true. Now, unfortunately, it's the actual opposite of the food choices we should be making in the morning, and I'll explain why. We have two hormones, well, actually several, but two main hormones that regulate blood sugar. Who's ever been hangry before? If you're not sure what hangry is, yeah, I have some yeses. You're hungry and you're angry. Or maybe you don't get angry, but maybe you get lightheaded. Maybe you get a little bit shaky, weak, or it's difficult for you to concentrate when you've either skipped a meal or you've actually, missed a meal. Now, that is not actual hunger. That is a blood sugar crisis. Your blood sugar has dropped dangerously low, and your body is alerting you saying, something's wrong, and it's going to make you feel uncomfortable until you eat. Now, of course, in these situations when we feel hangry, what do we want to eat? We don't want to eat chicken and broccoli. We want to eat carbohydrates, right? We're craving sugar. We're craving, or maybe it's not a sweet carbohydrate, maybe it's a savory carbohydrate. Maybe it's like potatoes, pasta, potato chips, right? Now, regardless, that is a reflection of just some blood sugar fluctuation. And that's a relationship between glucose, raises blood sugar, and insulin lowers blood sugar. In the morning is your first opportunity to help to balance your blood sugar. And you actually do that by eating 3 different types of food. So this is something that we want to take note of. 3 different types of foods are going to balance your blood sugar, keep your hormones in check, and help you lose body fat. Number 1 is protein. Number 2 is fat, quality fat. And number 3 is fiber, coming from vegetables. So the way that I remember it is PFF, and I recommend a PFF breakfast in the morning. Now, this can look like several things. And if you're anything like me, I am eating, for the longest time, my breakfast was bison and broccoli. Now, that might not sound appetizing to all of you for a breakfast, and I totally get it. So what I usually try and do is figure out what type of protein and what type of quality fats and fiber are going to fit well for you. If you are a busy individual in the morning and you need something just to grab and go, you can achieve that by combining a good quality protein powder with a little bit of nut butter. Maybe it's a little bit of coconut oil, maybe it's half of an avocado. And then you can throw in either, again, a good quality greens powder if you're really busy, or a handful of spinach, right? Protein, fat, and fiber. So to answer the person's question, or I guess it might have been multiple people, question of what would be a good meal for breakfast, my answer is, remember, PFF. Select a protein, add in a quality fat, and include lots of fibrous vegetables. The question underneath it, I kind of already answered in a way. What if I don't have time in the morning? What are some items that are quick and healthy? So number 1, if you have a blender, in about 2 minutes, you can put together those ingredients. I recommend the Designs for Health Pure Paleo protein. It is a very high quality, easy to digest protein, but it tastes amazing. And in the morning, I'm a big coffee fan, so I'll put a little bit of my coffee, I'll blend that up with some ice, some vanilla protein powder, a little bit of almond butter, and then I'll throw in a handful of spinach or our greens powder, because you don't really taste it, and it allows me to get all my green vegetables. So it's like my morning multivitamin. If you're not a fan of a smoothie, or, obviously we are, again, entering some cooler months, so maybe you don't want a cold drink in the morning, that is totally fine. I have a really easy chia seed pudding recipe that kind of facilitates the same thing. Smoothie bowls are really easy because you can add in some ingredients and eat it slowly rather than drinking a cold drink. So there's many, many ways that we can achieve that, and you can get super creative. Now, before I move on to some other questions, because there's a few questions about metabolism, some questions about specific diets, I don't want to move too far away from the question of morning meals, and I do have a question here. So can I have boiled eggs with roasted veg like broccoli and cauliflower for breakfast? So let's break that meal down before I say yes or no. So when we're talking whole eggs, the egg white is 100% protein, 0 fat. So perfect. There's your quality protein source. The inner yolk of the egg, the yellow part, is all fat. Amazing fat that is so good for your brain. It contains lots of choline and vitamin D. So there's your quality fat. And then if we roast up some veggies like broccoli and cauliflower, which are very high in fiber, there's our fiber. So we have protein, we have fat, we have fiber. That breakfast is a phenomenal way to start the day. Any other questions when it comes to breakfast, what to eat in the morning, and meal timing? Oatmeal, banana, and peanut butter. So something very common in the morning that a lot of, clients in general, people are having are like cereals and oatmeals, right? So let's break down the components of this meal. When we're talking oats are a carbohydrate, right? So there's sugar in that. Carbohydrates break down into sugar. And then banana is also a fruit that does contain a lot of sugars. It actually has a very high glycemic index. So a glycemic index essentially is how high a food raises your blood sugar. Bananas of all of the fruits have a very high glycemic index. Berries, for instance, like cherries, strawberries, blueberries, they have a very low glycemic index. So there's more sugar. And then when we're talking peanut butter, and believe it or not, as much as peanut has the word nut in it, it is in fact a legume. It is not a nut. So that's kind of like a cool fact if you want to chat with your friends and be like a nutrition geek like me. They're a legume. The consideration with peanuts is actually they contain something called aflatoxin, which is an inflammatory mold. They're very prone to mold. So we find that peanuts, we're seeing this in the school system. If you are a parent or you have little ones that are in the school system, right now, there's pretty much absolutely no peanuts or tree nuts allowed in school. And the reason is they are a high food allergen. They are a fat source, but because of the sensitivities that come with it, there are some better choices. So when it comes to this breakfast here, we don't actually have any quality protein in that meal, and that is a meal centered around carbohydrate. So what ends up happening when we eat a meal, especially in the morning, that's high in sugars, high in carbohydrate, very low in protein, is that we might feel good for that first hour, 2 hours after eating the meal because our blood sugar is elevated. And in fact, that actually makes us feel good, right? We get some energy. But what goes up must come down. And when that blood sugar comes down, we get a crash. And that constant up and down fluctuation, that is what leads to difficult fat loss, energy dips and rises, and hormone imbalances. So what I would do with that meal, if you're anything like me and you love a sweet breakfast, which I absolutely do, I would actually switch that to either a grain-free kind of morning bowl, and I have some recipes. Please, send me a message afterwards. We can talk about that include things like coconut and almond flour, which are very high in fiber, high in quality fats, but very low in carbohydrate. And then I add in protein powder in there. Something that I've been doing actually now for the past month is it's like this brownie bowl, and it has good quality cacao, so cocoa powder, coconut flour, protein powder. I mix that up, I warm it up, and then I drizzle cashew butter on top of it, and it is to die for. So if you do have questions, I can definitely follow up with you after. And thank you for sharing, Julia. That's a really great feedback. Fasting. Great question. So there are some questions about fasting, so let's answer those now. As well as, obviously when we think of fasting, if you're familiar with intermittent fasting, you're probably familiar with the morning, skip your breakfast and eat your lunch, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. When it comes to morning fasts, what I will say is that it's individualized. So depending on what's going on with your body, fasting may or may not be a good strategy for you. And the way that you can determine this is by working with a nutritionist or with a nutrition specialist that can actually monitor what's going on with your body. If you have a lot of hormonal issues, fasting might not be the greatest option for you right away. Also, what I find with fasting where people tend to go wrong is, number one, they fast too often. So they'll fast every single day, let's say. And then because they are fasting for such a prolonged period of time, when they do get the chance to eat, they are eating everything, right? Because they're starving. So there's a difference between fasting and starving your body. And your body is very smart and it knows the difference. So let's talk about traditional intermittent fasting, because there's many questions here that were submitted that have to do with intermittent fasting, 16/8 intermittent fasting, and what that's all about. So let me explain that to those who are not familiar. Intermittent fasting has been used for a very long time. And believe it or not, it was actually not for fat loss initially. Fasting was initially used for individuals who had epilepsy, who suffered from seizures. And what they found is that before we had medication to help with seizure prevention, fasting was actually a great way to prevent this patient from having seizures. So that's actually where it began. And then where we found some benefit, and if this actually makes sense if we really think about it, our ancestors did not always have access to food, right? I can pick up my phone right now and in 20 minutes, Uber Eats can deliver something to my house, right? 2020, amazing technology. But our ancestors didn't have that ability. So they would go through periods of time where maybe they had food and then other periods of time where they had a lot less. And that put a stress on their body. And we think of stress as negative, but in fact, at certain periods of time, we can have eustress or good stress on our body that helps our body adapt and change. What we found now is that this is a great tool for fat loss if it's done effectively. So there's my first caution. Make sure that it works for you. I have actually seen many clients that have come to me after doing prolonged periods of fasting where it has made them hold on to fat more and make it difficult, even more difficult to have them release that fat. So just be very cautious if you decide to take it on. And there are many ways to do this. So when I say 16/8 intermittent fasting, what I am talking about is time. And what that essentially means is that for 16 hours of the day, you are fasting. You're not eating anything. You can drink things that are 0-calorie drinks like water, black tea, coffee, sparkling water. These are all perfectly fine. Nothing with a caloric content to it. If you have something that has a calorie associated with it, then you would not be fasting anymore and you'd be feeding. And then the 8 hours of this 16/8, the 8 hours is the feeding window. So within 8 hours, you would consume your food. Now, what we've noticed is that our bodies rise and fall with the sun. We've sort of known this. When there's sunlight out, we wake up. When it gets dark, we go to sleep. So what hasn't been considered in this 16/8 fast is the timing, right? And every client I've worked with, I've actually had on a different time when they intermittent fast. So it is really about figuring out what's right for you. I'll give you a great example. Majority of my male clients do really well skipping breakfast and starting at their first meal around noon, maybe 1 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock. As a female and myself, that absolutely put my energy in the tank. I felt horrible. I actually do really well fasting from 5 p.m. So I finish my last meal earlier in the evening. And then I have my first meal around 9-10 o'clock the next day. So that's just a perfect example of it. It really is not a one-size-fits-all approach. So if you do decide to jump into some fasting, be sure of a couple of things. Is it the right strategy for you? What is the split? So how many hours of fasting versus how many hours of feeding? What is the split that is best for you? What is the timing that is best for you? Are you a morning faster or are you like me? Are you an evening faster? And then lastly, what are you eating within that window of time that you are feeding? And are we consuming enough nutrients or are we consuming too many calories or energy? And those are some things to consider when it comes to intermittent fasting. So hopefully I touched on a few things there. Does anyone else have any specific questions to fasting?
Hey, Melissa, what about the fasting for the detox?
Great question. So this goes back to that timing structure. So the type of fasting that I talked about was that 16-8. And what the research says right now is that the 16-8 way of fasting, 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of feeding, is the best for fat loss. So if that is your intention, that's really great. When it comes to detoxification or actually support for your digestive system, we actually see that 12 hours is all that you need. And this is actually easily achieved because we really should be sleeping for 8 hours. And if you're not, I think we should do a talk on sleep. And beyond that, we really should try and avoid eating within a couple hours of falling asleep, right? We shouldn't be eating just before we go to bed. So thanks, Katerina. We will absolutely spend some time on sleep once we've gotten through these questions. I think it is a huge topic and very, very important. So when it comes to this 12-hour fast, we could actually easily achieve it. And I love that you brought this up, Saber. This is actually the easiest way to start fasting, to introduce it. Just start with 12 hours. See what happens. See how you feel, right? And that's as simple as finishing your dinner at, maybe you're finishing your supper around 7 p.m. Well, start your breakfast around 7 to 8 a.m., right? Pretty easily done. I just got a question in the chat here that says, how do you break your fast? Mohit, that's a great question, because I think this is also where we kind of go wrong. So number one, if you're breaking your fast and you're hungry, you're starving, you've been like staring at your clock, waiting for that last hour to hit so you can get to 16 hours, we've already done damage. We never, ever, ever fast until the point that we are hungry. If your body is signaling that the blood sugar level is dropping and that we need to put some food in, we need to listen and respect our body. And that is where, you'll start to understand what type of fasting is actually good for you. So that's first and foremost. If you're hungry, please eat and break your fast. But what do you break your fast with? So the reason that fasting helps with fat loss is it improves your insulin sensitivity. So I mentioned what insulin does earlier. It is the hormone that lowers your blood sugar levels. It is also your fat storage hormone. Every time insulin levels rise, and insulin levels rise every single time you eat, you have an opportunity to store fat. So that means that what you eat is really the make or break between, is that meal going to fuel your body and give you energy, or is that meal going to cause you to store more fat? Right back to that PFF breakfast, that is exactly what I would recommend to break your fast. Good quality protein, quality fats, and fibrous vegetables. Julia is saying, when I come home from work exhausted at the end of the day, I usually crave sweets. And what is a smart snack so she can relieve that? So Julia, what's happening in that situation is that is a hormonal craving. You aren't craving sweets because your body needs sugar, right? Sugar in the sense of like a pastry or a cookie or whatever, chocolate. It's actually craving it because it's stressed. So what I will say is that a really great example of a snack would be something that keeps your blood sugar levels nice and stable, like maybe some raw nuts and seeds. If you really are craving, let's say chocolate, I would do an 80% dark, just one square of a chocolate that's sweetened naturally with stevia. One of the brands that I really love is called Lily's. Another one is called Lakanto, and these are chocolates that are free of sugar. They have natural sweeteners that are 0 calorie, not sucralose and aspartame, natural sweeteners. So that would be really great. It also contains a lot of magnesium, which we're going to talk about in a sec. And because your body is going through some stress because of this exhaustive day of work, your body is calling out for sugar because your adrenal glands are very taxed, they're very stressed. And this will help to lower your stress response. This is really a Band-Aid situation for you though, Julia. The ultimate goal would be to support your adrenal glands, support your stress response, and get you on some nutrients that are actually going to kick these cravings. So this is essentially a sign your body's telling you what it needs, but it's showing you through cravings. And what's really amazing actually is that any craving that you have is typically associated with some sort of deficiency or area of concern in your body. So a great example to the women that are in the room, if you crave chocolate in and around particular times of the month, right? That is actually a sign that you're magnesium deficient. It doesn't mean that because we have our menstrual cycle that all of a sudden our body needs chocolate. It's craving stuff like that because those are rich, potent sources of magnesium. So food, there was a question here, how do you get magnesium and zinc from food over supplements? And I have actually my arsenal of absolute foundational products that I recommend everyone be on. We're going to talk about those. Food is a really great way to start to get these nutrients, but it's not enough. We need a therapeutic dose of them. So I'm going to make sure that I save some time for that. Let's get through some of these questions. So hopefully we can talk about sleep and get into this foundational stack that I'm talking about here. So there were some questions about different diets, and it had a lot to do with fat loss recommendations for someone with a very slow metabolism. So again, terms like I have a slow metabolism, I have a speedy metabolism, stoke your metabolism. A lot of these terms are thrown out with very little knowledge or background as to what's actually going on in your body. So if we have a situation where there's difficult fat loss, it might be for a couple of reasons. One, it could be that your digestion needs to be optimized, right? You are not what you eat, you're what you digest. And in a world where we are constantly stressed, eating while answering emails, eating while on the go driving, we are not properly digesting our food. So that's number one. Number two is that likely if your metabolism or hormones have been damaged, and that's typically why we see difficult fat loss, we need to focus on your sleep and optimizing your nutrient status. And this is where talking about these foundational products are going to come into play. And metabolism, whether we're a sugar burner, typically if we're eating a standard American diet or North American diet that's comprised of a lot of sugar, we're a sugar burner. So that would be like a bagel for breakfast or cereal for breakfast, and a sandwich for lunch, and a bowl of pasta for dinner. That's a typical standard American diet. Your body is used to burning sugar. So we really want to move and shift your body into a fat burning state, so that it can start to metabolize some of your stored body fat. And again, we can do this through nutrition, through lifestyle, and through quality supplementation. And that's a really good way to start. And we will most definitely talk about what those nutrients would be. I want to save the zinc questions and the magnesium questions when it comes to actually discussing these products, because I think it's going to actually really focus on the whole stack and why it's really beneficial. And before I actually get into that, because with all of the questions that I have here, majority that are left have everything to do with supplements, I want to open the floor to if anyone has any other questions that are non-supplement related, and then we can kind of get into the supplement stack. There's something in the chat box here. Yes, I love that. What you are not what you eat, but what you digest is actually one of the best, because everyone knows you are what you eat, right? Everyone's heard you are what you eat. And unfortunately, it's not that easy. We have to actually take into consideration our body systems and what's going on with that. I'll ask a question to the group. Has anyone eaten anything and felt like gassy, burpy, you feel a little bit bloated? You notice that after you eat, you kind of like, the food baby, you kind of have like a little tummy? Yeah. So we kind of consider all of these things as like, well, whatever, it's what happens when I eat. In fact, that is a sign that you have digestive upset or digestive distress. That is not normal. Feeling bloated, having gas, burps after your meals, indigestion, that is not a normal sign of eating. And that is a sign that we need to optimize our digestion. And there are some serious risks to not digesting your food properly. So an example, if you don't have enough stomach acid you are not properly digesting protein. Protein needs very strong stomach acid to be able to break it down. So if we're eating meat or eggs or even vegan sources of protein powders, and without breaking down our protein, we're actually not going to be able to build muscle, and therefore fat loss is going to be very difficult. Those amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, they help to detoxify our body. So if we're concerned about detoxification and we aren't properly breaking down protein, our body cannot properly detoxify. Other nutrients that need strong stomach acid that are sort of lowered if we have poor digestion are things like B12. B12 helps to prevent anemia. It helps to give us energy. It helps to metabolize our carbohydrate. Calcium needs a lot of stomach acid. If you are concerned or have a history of osteoporosis in your family, then we want adequate levels of calcium in our body. And another one is zinc, which there's a lot of questions about. So I have here 6 products that are my desert island supplements. And let me explain what I mean by that. If I was stuck on a desert island and I could only choose a selection of products to keep with me, these guys I would be grasping on for dear life, okay? And I'm gonna explain to you why. Because even someone like myself who looks at the research, is a nutritionist that tries to stay active, eat healthy, sleep well, focus on my stress, I still need help and support. We know this because as of 2012, Health Canada actually released studies showing that food is not enough. And that's actually really scary as a nutritionist. But we now know that our soil quality is really not good in North America, and we are not getting the nutrients that we need. So I do everything that I can to eat healthy, but I'm actually still at a disadvantage. This is why I use the products that I use. So I know we talked about digestion, and that's why I'm going to start with Digestzymes. I'm going to bring my light down there so you can actually see it. Now, this is a digestive enzyme. And what this does is it helps me to break down all of the good quality food that I'm eating. If you experience bloating, if you have food intolerances, let's say there's a food you know, like gluten, dairy, that upsets your stomach, or maybe it gives you like an acne or a breakout. For me, dairy definitely makes me break out. Then adding in a digestive enzyme is going to boost your stomach acid so that all of that good quality food that you're putting in your body, you can actually access all the nutrients from it. Here's the really cool part about Digestzymes. And so an example is last night, I went out to dinner with some friends and we went to have sushi, and sushi is my absolute favorite, but there's gluten in things like soy sauce, right? And there's also cross-contamination. Even though I didn't select rolls that contain gluten, there's still risk of cross-contamination with dairy and gluten. There is a digestive enzyme within this product that makes it very unique, that helps you digest gluten and dairy. So that's not to give you permission, obviously, to eat these foods that wreak havoc in your system. But if you are eating in a restaurant, if you are eating out often or visiting, let's say, friends, and you're not really sure what's in the food that you're eating, this is your savior because it's going to make sure that you don't feel bloated and gross the next day. So digestive enzymes, for that reason, always, always, always are a part of my non-negotiables. There's the name right there. Number 2, so this is a liquid omega-3. And the reason that I supplement with an omega-3, so just as a show of hands, who is eating cold water fatty fish that is wild caught, one serving between 2 to 3 times a week? So I'm talking salmon, trout, sardines, mackerel, herring. Who can say that they are doing that 2 to 3 times per week, a full serving? I see one hand. I don't see, oh, another one. Okay. So then there's some cameras off, so I don't know here. If you are not getting at least that in, you absolutely are not getting enough omega-3. Beyond that, if you experience anything that is rooted in inflammation. And what I mean by that is heart issues, issues with your blood pressure or your blood vessels, inflammatory conditions like arthritis, anything with an itis at the end essentially is inflammation, right? So encephalitis, arthritis, these are all examples of disease processes that are rooted in inflammation. Well, this helps to reduce your inflammation. And we eat a lot more omega-6s than we do omega-3s. So this is why I do include omega-3s. It helps with fat loss and it helps with inflammation. Anne's got a great question. How are they derived and processed, their quality level compared to other products and brands? And I love that you brought this up, Anne, when I was talking about the fish oil. So I was a paramedic, as Brian mentioned in my biography, and while I was a paramedic, I was just going to Costco and buying my fish oil. And I was going to Costco because they were cheaper and I could get them in a big container, and I would just take my fish oil. And to be honest, I didn't really notice a difference, but everyone said take a fish oil, it's good for you, so I just did it, right? So what's the difference between a generic, let's say mass merchandiser or health food store brand versus a professional brand? So majority of fish oil that are retail sold are in a form called ethyl ester. And I'm not going to get into the chemistry of it because it does get a little bit high level, but this is a fish oil type that is very difficult to absorb. And you might have noticed if you've ever taken a fish oil, if you kind of get like fishy burps and you take the fish oil, maybe an hour later, you kind of have a bit of indigestion and you're burping it up or you can taste it. That is a perfect example of a fish oil that's an ethyl ester form. It's very difficult to absorb for the body, and your pancreas, which helps you break down fats, has to work really, really hard to break it down. Now, when you choose a professional brand, what you're getting is a triglyceride form of fish oil. And what we do is make sure that over 90% of the product is a triglyceride fish oil. Now, the scary truth is that in this industry, in our industry, you only have to convert over about 60% to call yourself a triglyceride. And I don't know about you, but if I was getting tested, I would want 90% or more. I wouldn't settle with 60%. So the reason that it is important to source good quality products is you are wasting a lot of money by taking a product that is not absorbable, because unfortunately you're eliminating it either through sweat, through urine, or through feces. And the most expensive supplement that you can take is the one that is not working. So especially when it comes to fish oil, be sure that you are taking a triglyceride fish oil, because that is the most absorbable form. It's the way it's found in nature. And make sure that it has a high conversion rate. And again, that's something where it's like, well, I've never heard these things before. That's a lot to take in. Either contact the company that you're using or use a trusted brand that is a professional brand that has done all of these things for you. So the second product on this list is Omega Veil, and there are many types. I use the liquid, there are capsules, and there are the Omega Veil smoothies. If you really don't like the taste of fish oil, that tastes like a treat. So lots of options on the fish oil. So that's my second recommendation. I want to talk a little bit about zinc, because a lot of what's happened in the world right now has made us very concerned about our immune system. And I think that that is a really good thing. As much as we've gone through a lot of, unfortunately, it's been kind of scary recently, right? The fact that we are working to optimize our immune system is such a good thing. Guys, we are entering cold and flu season. So in addition to everything going on in the world right now, cold and flu season is upon us. So what can we do to protect ourselves, to keep us healthy? Because a lot of us have gone back to work. Children have gone back to school. We are exposed to more people. This is a phenomenal way to get started. And I kind of want to use both of these products together, zinc and vitamin D, because that's what the literature is saying right now. So right from the beginning, as we've been experiencing what's going on with this virus, we've heard the benefit of adding in a zinc supplementation. It's been used in hospital settings. it's been advised that we make sure that we take zinc and optimize our zinc levels. And the reason is zinc helps to boost immunity. So one of the questions that I got in the email from all of you was, what are some food sources of zinc? So what I will say is, yes, we are chatting about, a supplement, which is very easy and convenient to take, but there are ways to get zinc. However, it's in very small amounts. So I do recommend that you absolutely include these foods, but if you are looking to prevent colds and flu and make sure that your immune system is optimal, you are going to be required to take higher amounts. You get zinc from raw nuts and seeds. You also get zinc from things like oysters. So shellfish like oysters. Now, I totally get that that is not your cup of tea if you're kind of thinking, I don't really like oysters, and that's okay. That is why I would recommend that you make sure that you are getting a good quality zinc product. So add in those raw nuts and seeds, keep them in your diet. They're very good for you and they do contain some zinc, but be sure that you are taking a zinc. Now, I want to talk about Anne's question again with regards to zinc, because there's a lot of zinc out there, right? You can buy zinc anywhere. The form of zinc that you take is incredibly important. Majority of zinc that you're finding in the market is a zinc cholinate or a zinc citrate. And these are, again, very poorly absorbed forms of zinc. You are looking for a zinc bisglycinate, which I know the writing is very, very small, so I'm not going to show you, but right here we have a zinc bisglycinate. That is the most absorbable form. And you need all of the other nutrients that help zinc absorb. And what you will find in Zinc Supreme is that all of those nutrients are already there in the capsule. So you get 30 milligrams of zinc, which answers one of the questions that's just in the chat, as well as all of the nutrient cofactors, which means the nutrients that help zinc absorb, all in one capsule. So Ashish, to answer your question, as a male client who is active, over 150 pounds, so majority adult male, you would benefit from at least a minimum of 2 capsules of zinc, so approximately 60 milligrams of zinc per day. If you find during cold and flu season that you are more susceptible, you can increase this dose. Women, we are good with just 1 capsule of zinc. And what's really great here is you're getting 90 capsules. So this container as a woman can last you 3 months, which is really fantastic. Again, though, I would absolutely increase this during cold and flu season because we are lacking it and we very much need it. So zinc is another one of my desert island supplements. This is Zinc Supreme. And you're looking for zinc bisglycinate. So I showed you 2 supplements, but I put it down. And the other product here was vitamin D. So I don't know if anyone else is staying kind of in tune with the news and what the news is saying right now, but vitamin D has now officially made it. There is so much research that's coming out, made it onto the list that it will absolutely help to prevent you when it comes to how susceptible you are to this virus. It will actually help to prevent you from the exposure and actually, potentially boost your immune system so that you are not exposed or have, the virus. And that's really, really amazing for a few reasons. Number one, the literature has always been there. It's just so nice to see it now in the media, that the media is in fact confirming what we've already known, which is vitamin D is so, so, so important to protect you from viruses. And number two, I talked about light at the beginning of the session. We are entering a stage where, we get vitamin D from the sun. That's it. You get tiny, tiny amounts from, let's say cod liver oil and a little bit from eggs, but not nearly enough. I mean, they're treating patients in hospitals with thousands of IU, which is the unit of measurement, thousands of vitamin D, right? You get very, very little from food. So this is something that is so, so, so powerful. Be sure that you find a liquid vitamin D. So this one here is just in liquid form. The reason that you want a liquid vitamin D, everyone, is vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. So this is a vitamin D that is suspended in fat, in coconut oil and MCT oil. That's what we use. It helps this product absorb. The other thing that is so important about vitamin D is that you have a vitamin D with vitamin K2. You need them together. It helps them absorb. So you have a product here with 2,000 international units of vitamin D and all of the vitamin K1 and K2 that you need to have this product absorb. So Emulsa D, even now more than ever, because of the research that we've seen with how it supports prevention of viruses, Emulsa D Synergy is another one of my desert island supplements. And the other product is another one of the questions. So we talked a lot about magnesium. I could probably, just like on sleep, I could probably do an entire conversation on magnesium. Magnesium helps to balance your mood. Magnesium helps to support your body when it's undergoing stress. It is responsible for over 300 processes in the body. So there is so much that your body relies on when it comes to magnesium. And here's the funny part. When you are under stress, you lose so much more magnesium. So the very thing that you need to help support your stress levels, you're losing more of when you're under stress. So if you are not sleeping properly, you are under stress. If you are not eating properly, you are under stress. If you are going through hardships, whether it be physical or also emotional, you are under stress. Sometimes when we think of stress, the only stress we think of is we had a fight with our partner, right? That's not always the only type of stress our body is exposed to. So taking magnesium is an absolute foundational product when it comes to health. And here's the interesting part with magnesium, because we are all different, because we are all going through different situations in our life, we all require different amounts of magnesium. And you can actually be your own doctor to figure out how much magnesium you need just by slowly increasing your dose of magnesium each day. So an example, take 2 capsules one night, you feel great the next day, perfect, increase. Continue to increase. You will know when you've taken enough magnesium when you have an upset stomach or you have a loose bowel movement. That's magnesium's job, it's to relax, right? So if we aren't absorbing it in the stomach and it spills over into your intestine and you have a loose bowel movement, you know you've hit that perfect sweet spot. You back down 1 capsule. So let me say that again. You increase. Let's say you get to 4 capsules of magnesium and that next day you have a loose bowel movement. Perfect, you've hit your target. You bring it down to 3 capsules of magnesium and that's where you stay. And that might fluctuate because life changes. What is the limit? You absolutely cannot overdo it. What would happen is you would have a loose stool. That is the absolute worst thing that would happen. And realistically, a lot of us suffer actually from the opposite, where we aren't having enough bowel movements. So this is actually a great thing. But if you do find that as you're increasing, you have a day where you have loose stool, then just back off one capsule and that's your sweet spot. Stay there. I had a question just about vitamin D. Just want to go back and answer that before we continue on magnesium. How much vitamin D that I recommend? So this is very individualized. For $35, you can request a vitamin D lab test, and it'll show you whether you are severely low. Now, my recommendation is even if you do come back with a low or low normal, that you still do include vitamin D, again, because it's cold and flu season and we know we need it more. This really is individualized, and the reason that I can't give out a general recommendation here on this chat is for 2 reasons. Number 1, we really would want to know what's going on with your body and your levels. And number 2, Health Canada really keeps the amount of vitamin D at a specific level. That by no means is because that is what is healthiest. It is just because that's what the legislature says. So I do take an individualized approach. What I can say is what I'm doing personally is 10,000 international units. 1 dropper here is 2,000. I'm taking another vitamin D to bulk it up. Please work with someone to figure out what your needs are. What's really interesting about vitamin D is those who have come to North America, so to Canada, from somewhere outside that has more sun. So example, let's say the Caribbean, If you have darker skin, the more melanin that you have in your skin, the more vitamin D you require. And that is because, from an ancestral standpoint, your ancestors had more sunlight. And if you are now living in North America, but let's say your ancestors have come from the Caribbean, for instance, you are not used to the lack of sun that we have here in North America. So the more melanin you have in your skin, the more vitamin D you need. As an elderly or the aging population, you need a lot more vitamin D. So when it comes to magnesium, the only other question that I had here that I want to make sure that I cover so everyone has those questions answered are food sources for magnesium. I already mentioned a very potent food source earlier, and that is cacao or cocoa chocolate. I will say, big caution though, I'm not talking about a Hershey's chocolate bar or Mars bar and oh good, I've got my magnesium. Exactly, Katerina nailed it. Dark chocolate, preferably chocolate that is 80% or higher in the cocoa percentage. And bonus marks, if you can find, I put it in the chat up there, Lily's or Lakanto. There's probably other brands out there too that are sweetened with either stevia or monk fruit. Yeah, and Lakanto. And those are really readily available at any Healthy Planet. I order mine online. So you can find these really good quality chocolates. Another source of magnesium outside of chocolate though is avocado, and again, nuts and seeds. So include those foods, but again, remember that they are delivering a very small amount, and we really need a therapeutic, a lot of magnesium to help to support our body. So be sure to do both. So I know we are at that hour mark, and all of our time here, obviously I want to respect all of that. It's the weekend. However, what I will say is it sounds like sleep has come up, and it sounds like there are other questions too that might come up after you read this, after you have some time to think about it. So what I will say is, I will leave it up to all of you, and I will chat with your coaches, but if sleep seems to be something that might be helpful, that could be a future topic, and then we can also do, like we just did here today, a nice Q&A at the end. Thank you guys. Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll definitely do a bit of a deeper dive onto sleep. It's kind of the unsung hero. Thank you everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It was a great lesson today. We learned a lot.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. It's always amazing hanging out with everyone. So like I said, keep the conversation going. If you'd like to connect with me, you can do that with the contact information that I had mentioned above. I love getting feedback like this. I won't. I'm here.
Okay, well, everyone, so you can find Melissa on Instagram and Facebook. So if you have any further question, please contact her, or you can also contact us so we can get the answer from her for you. Okay?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so we're going to wrap it up today, and then we hope to see Melissa again soon.
Thank you, everyone. You absolutely will. That's for sure.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.